This is the third of 3 classification examples that we're running through. This time, once again, using the general rules of interpretation, but specifically to sets. As noted, because we saw this in a previous section, the GRIs are very helpful in carrying out the procedure for properly classifying a product. Second bullet, one area where the GRIs provide a great deal of clarity is when dealing with sets. As a sub-bullet, we'll say that there are a number of circumstances where the term set can be applied. As a quick trade tip, an excellent resource for a more detailed interpretation of the GRIs can be found in the explanatory notes of the harmonized system, not the HTS-US, the actual harmonized system, that parent document that is published by the World Customs Organization. Once again, GRIs are universal, at least for the countries that are part of the World Customs Organization. Therefore, there are good explanatory notes on sets in the HS. Let's talk about the GRIs. And in that previous section, we saw this and went over it in some detail. Let's put it in practice. For example, and we are talking about sets here, GRI 3B goes into detail on goods that are put up in sets for retail sale. We saw that terminology. Consistent with the HS explanatory notes, which we spoke of just a moment ago, a set is defined as at least 2 different articles which are classifiable in different headings. For example, a set of barbecue utensils where there's a spatula, wire brush, tongs, etc. The spatula and the wire brush, 2 different things, 2 different classifications. The same can be said for the tongs and the wire brush. Third bullet, a set may also consist of products or articles put up together to meet a particular need or carry out a specific activity. Think about a large first aid kit as an example. Last bullet, an item can be classified as a set if it is put up in a manner suitable for sale directly to users without repacking, i.e. retail ready. In a box or a clamshell, that clear plastic clamshell packaging that is so popular today. But in terms of sets, we can think, in some instances, about retail ready to go. Change of title. In this slide, we're going to look at a classification example for sets, specifically kitchenware. For our purposes of demonstrating how the GRIs aid in proper classification, of course, in this instance, a set, the example of kitchenware is a good one. It will meet the standard of at least 2 different classification numbers. It's certainly put up to meet a particular need or specific activity. And a lot of kitchenware that has multiple products that could have different classifications in it comes in the same box. It's retail ready. We will use a quick cheat sheet here in our last bullet point and say that the example of kitchenware as a set is applicable to HTS numbers 8215.10.00 and 8215.20.00. We're going to forego the search and such and go straight to the classification of sets, in our case, kitchenware. We are now in Chapter 82. Why are we in 82? Because it covers tools, implements, cutlery, spoons and forks of base metal and parts thereof of base metal. We're looking at the notes to Chapter 82. Let's see what we have here. Apart from blow torches and similar self-contained torches, portable forges, grinding wheels with frameworks, manicure or pedicure sets, and goods of heading 8209, this chapter covers only articles with a blade, working edge, working surface, or other working part of. It's kitchenware. We can assume safely that there's some blades and edges in there. Goes down further to talk about base metal, metal carbides. We don't need to worry about that too much. And then in 2, parts of base metal of the articles of this chapter are to be classified with the articles of which they are parts. That doesn't apply to us either. We're good on the notes. We just like to be thorough and follow a procedure from the general to the specific. We knew we were starting out in Chapter 82 because we had gone through the more general exercises previously. We can jump right in here. Here are those 2 8-digit legal classifications, 8215.10.00 and 8215.20.00. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we always want to start at our heading. 8215, at the very top, spoons, forks, ladles, skimmers, cake servers, fish knives, butter knives, sugar tongs, and similar kitchen or tableware, and base metal parts thereof. We're in the right place. We have a good heading there. Let's continue on. The next classification is that 10-digit 8215100000. Sets of assorted articles containing at least one article plated with precious metal. Kitchenware in the U.S. of the type found in large big box retailers isn't likely to be plated with precious metal. Maybe it is. If indeed it is, this is the classification. Let's go down to 8215200000, other sets of assorted articles, not plated with precious metals. What do we have here? Something pretty interesting, actually, in our rates of duty column. Let's start with general. The rate of duty applicable to that article in the set subject to the highest rate of duty. Well, that causes us to have to dig a little bit further. That's for the general column. So if there's a preponderance of knives in a set and knives have the highest rate of duty, that's what's going to apply. We don't know. We're not going to go that far. Let's move over to the right and assume, for example, that our sets were sourced in Mexico. Well, what do we have in the special? Well, it's duty-free, number one, so that's a good place to start. But if we go through our two-letter uppercase symbols, do we see Mexico in there? MX, of course, it's part of NAFTA. As such, our 8215200000 other sets of assorted articles would be duty-free. None of this rate of duty applicable to that article in the set subject to the highest rate of duty. So we as sourcing people would be even more inspired to see if we can buy these sets in one of these countries: Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Jordan, Korea, certainly Mexico, because we said that was our example. That's our classification. We're assuming that our country of origin was Mexico. We're good to go, and it's duty-free. Once again, a tie back to sourcing strategy and looking for countries that have lower or non-existent duty rates. Not a bad idea. Let's finish up this section with a real-world perspective, reinventing the classification wheel. We've finished up 3 classifications. Most importers, while they will introduce new products that they import on a yearly basis, bring in the same stuff repeatedly. That's kind of the backstory to this real-world perspective. A 20-year veteran of the logistics and trade compliance industry just became import manager for a company that imports electrical fixtures and plumbing supplies from a number of countries in Asia. The company has been bringing in the same items for quite some time and only introduces a few new items per year to its portfolio of imported products. These are repeat imports. Second paragraph. Upon being on the job for a month, the new manager notices that different entry writers from the customs broker are constantly calling to ask for classification numbers for items that are imported on a regular basis. What can the import manager do to alleviate this constant reinventing of the classification wheel? Because in the end, it's a waste of time to be reclassifying the same stuff over and over again. And that exercise, by its very definition, is susceptible to errors. Let's see what the solution is. Last paragraph. First off, the manager might consider telling the customs broker that her account has to be handled by the same people and not have import files split up amongst random entry writers. We'll talk more about that towards the end of this module, but that's something to think about when working with a broker. How do they handle files? Is it one person or is it a production line? Second sentence. Of perhaps greater importance, the manager should provide the broker with an item master file, a parts file as it's also called, that contains a full listing of items, their item number, product description, corresponding HTS number, and country of origin. We talked about item master files a bunch of times. This should not be a surprise. Last sentence. That way, the broker can use the master file for its own reference and not have to be calling the importer for the same information over and over again. Importers that have a steady stream of entries and have a fair amount of different products should really consider using an item master or a parts file and getting it in the hands of the broker so that they can repurpose the same information and do the entries quicker and more accurately. That's the theme of this real-world perspective. We're going to end our classification exercises. We did 3, pretty varied, a fairly comprehensive treatment of the subject. We're going to move on in the next section to an analysis of how customs duties are assessed in the United States. That whole theme around valuation.